Hello everyone, today we will learn trade terms applicable to various modes of transportation in the 2020 General Rules. There are 7 terms applicable to various modes of transportation, namely EXW, FCA, CPT, CIP, DAP, DPU, DDP. First, EXW. The full text of EXW is Ex Works, which means Factory Delivery Designated Delivery Location. It refers to on the agreed date in the contract, the completion of delivery by the seller when the goods are placed at the buyer's disposal at its location or other designated location. First, under the EXW term borne by both parties, the main responsibilities, risks, and expenses are shown in the figure. Second, issues to be noted when using EXW terminology. First, the EXW term is followed by the specified delivery location. EXW 无锡中山 Road 15. 无锡中山 Road 15 is a designated delivery point. Second, EXW term is the only term in which the buyer is responsible for handling export customs clearance procedures, and it is also the term in which the seller has the least responsibility and the buyer has the greatest responsibility. Third, under EXW terms, the seller has no obligation to note the goods to the buyer. Second, FCA. The full text of FCA is Free Carrier, Ready-to-Ship Carrier, Designated Delivery Location, which refers to the seller on the date specified in the contract. The situation where loads the buyer's transport vehicle or other designated location and prepares to unload it from the seller's transport vehicle and hands it over to the buyer's designated carrier or other person for disposal, thus completing the delivery. First, under FCA terms borne by both parties, the main responsibilities, costs, and risks are shown in the figure. Second, issues to be noted when using FCA terminology. First, the designated delivery point is inserted after FCA, such as FCA number 25 Fourth Ring Road, Beijing. Second, if delivery is made at the seller's location, the seller is responsible for loading the goods. If the delivery is made at a location other than the seller's location, the seller is not responsible for unloading. Third, regarding the issue of risk transfer, when using FCA terms for transactions, the risk division between the buyer and the seller is based on the carrier of the goods. However, if the goods have been identified as goods under the contract in the following circumstance, the risk is transferred to the buyer in advance. First, the buyer fails to appoint a carrier or other person as required. Second, the carrier or other person designated by the buyer fails to take over the goods at the agreed time. Third, the buyer did not give sufficient notice to the seller. Third, CPT. The full text of the CPT term is carriage paid to pay the shipping fee when arrive designated destination, which means that the freight is on the agreed date in the contract, paid to the designated destination, delivering the goods specified in the contract to their designated carrier, thus completing the delivery. The seller must sign a transportation contract and pay the cost of transporting the goods to the designated destination. First, under the CPT term as shown in the figure, borne by both parties, the main responsibilities, costs, and risks are shown in the figure. Second, issues to be noted when using CPT terminology. First, the destination specified is inserted after CPT, like CPT Shanghai Pudong Airport. Shanghai Pudong Airport is a designated destination. Second, although CPT trade terms require the seller to be responsible for handling the transportation of goods and paying the freight, they do not require the seller to bear the risks and additional costs incurred during transportation. Third, responsibility and cost allocation issues. When using CPT trade terms, the seller only bears the normal freight from the delivery location to the designated destination. Other related expenses beyond normal shipping costs are generally borne by the buyer. Fourth, shipping notice. When using CPT trade terms after handing them over to the carrier, the seller shall promptly notify the buyer of the delivery of the goods so that the buyer can issue the goods in a timely manner and receive them at the destination. Fourth, CIP. The full name of CIP term is carriage insurance paid to pay the shipping and insurance fees when arrive designated destination. It refers to the seller on the agreed date in the contract, delivering the goods specified in the contract to the carrier designated by the seller, thus completing the delivery. The seller must sign a transportation contract and pay for the cost of transporting the goods to the designated destination, as well as insure the buyer against the risk of loss or damage to the goods during transportation. First, under the CIP term borne by both parties, the main responsibilities, costs, and risks are shown in the figure. Second, issues to be noted when using CIP terminology. First, the destination specified is inserted after CIP. Second, the CIP term is mainly used in the trade of high-value manufactured goods with multimodal transport and containers as the main modes of transportation. Third, the risks that may be encountered during transportation using CIP terminology are significantly greater than using CIF terminology. Fourth, compared to using FCA terminology, using CIP terminology requires the seller to bear more responsibilities and costs. Fifth, DAP. The full name of DAP is delivered at the place, delivery to destination, designated destination, which refers to the seller on the agreed date in the contract at the designated destination or an agreed delivery point within the designated destination, delivering the goods to the buyer. When the goods on the arriving transport vehicle are ready for unloading, delivery is completed. First, under DAP terminology, borne by both the buyer and seller, the main responsibilities, risks, and expenses are shown in the figure. Second, issues to be noted when using DAP terminology. First, the destination is specified after DAP, like DAP 76 Baldy Tree Street, Berlin. Second, the delivery location of DAP can be either at a designated location on the border between the two countries on the ship at the destination port, or at a certain point on land within the importing country. Third, the seller delivers the goods at the designated destination, but the seller is not responsible for unloading the goods from the arriving transportation vehicle. Fifth, the seller assumes the risk before delivery at a specific location. Therefore, both parties should agree on the delivery point within the destination as accurately as possible in the contract. Fifth, the seller has no obligation to enter into an insurance contract with the buyer, but as the risks of the entire transportation process are borne by the seller usually avoids the transportation risks of the goods by taking out insurance. 6. DPU. The full name of DPU is delivered at a place unloaded, which means delivery after unloading at the designated destination. It refers to the seller on the date specified in the contract at the designated destination or at the agreed delivery point within the designated destination, unloading the goods specified in the contract from the arriving transport vehicle and handing them over to the buyer for disposal, thus completing the delivery. First, under the DPU term borne by both parties, the main responsibilities, risks, and expenses are shown in the figure. Second, precautions should be taken when using DPU terminology. The designated destination is inserted after the DPU. In the 2020 January rules, DPU is the only term that requires the seller to unload at the destination. Therefore, the seller should ensure that it can organize unloading at the designated location. If both parties do not wish for the seller to bear the risk and the cost of unloading, DPU should not be used and DAP terminology should be used. 7th, DDP. The full name of DDP is Delivered Duty Paid. Delivered after tax payment designated destination, which means that the seller fulfills within the agreed date in the contract the delivery obligation when the goods, which are still on the transport vehicle at the designated destination, but have completed import customs clearance and are ready for unloading, are handed over to the buyer for disposal. First, under the DDP term borne by both parties, the main responsibilities, risks, and expenses are shown in the figure. Second, issues to be noted when using DDP terminology. The destination is specified after DDP. DDP is the term with the greatest seller responsibility. Under the DDP delivery terms, the seller delivers the goods at the designated destination after completing the import customs clearance procedures. If the seller cannot directly obtain import permits or handle import procedures, the DDP term should not be used. Fourth, the buyer is responsible for unloading the goods from the arriving transportation vehicle at the designated destination, but the seller must ensure that the goods are available for unloading. Third, factors to consider when choosing trade terms. In international trade, the choice of trade terms directly affects the economic interest of both buyers and sellers. Generally speaking, when choosing trade terms, the following factors should be considered. First, transportation mode. Due to the different transportation modes applicable to different trade terms, the buyer and the seller, when choosing which trade term to use, should first consider which transportation mode to use. Second, freight cost factors. Transportation costs account for a significant proportion of prices. Therefore, when choosing trade terms, it is necessary to calculate transportation costs. Third, control of goods. The risks of international trade are high, and when dealing with unfamiliar customers, the party controlling the ownership of the goods is often more proactive. Fourth, the degree of transportation risk. Due to the high transportation risks, exporters are generally unwilling to use destination delivery trade terms such as DAP and DDP. Importers are generally unwilling to use domestic land delivery trade terms such as EXW. Fifth, the loading and unloading conditions of ports in different countries are different, and the levels of loading and unloading fees and freight are also different, and some ports have some customary practices. Therefore, when choosing trade terms, port loading and unloading conditions and customs should be considered. Sixth, in addition to the 5 factors mentioned above, when choosing trade terms, importers and exporters should also consider the situation of foreign exchange receipts and payments, domestic insurance industry, and transportation industry. Please complete the following post-class tasks. That's all for this lesson. See you next time.